Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews podcast. I'm your host, AJ Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33 or my website, AaronJArmstrong.com. Today, we had a very special guest. His name's Terry Rich. He is a speaker, best-selling author, and the former CEO and president of multiple companies throughout the United States. So Terry Rich is a successful CEO and president of 25 years who loves to engage and entertain audiences across the globe. He's led the team that busted the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history, which was worth over $80 billion. He was also a guest on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, ran a zoo, and gave away another $1 billion. During his appointment by 3 governors, his leadership increased lottery sales and profits by 50%. He also led the Blank Park Zoo to profitability from a $600,000 deficit while positioning it as the second largest attended attraction in the state. But his national insight on business, banking, gaming, TV production, marketing, and PR led him to success in his professional career and to his passion in public speaking. Before that, he started 4 successful entrepreneurial businesses. He has numerous national media appearances, including ABC, NBC, HBO, CBS, 2020, CNN, CNBC, USA Today, and the New York Times. He was also a movie host on Stars. He is a disruptive innovator, an entrepreneur with a drive for integrity and honesty. His work in the trenches survived new businesses, new business trends, and he had success with generational changes. Terry is the author of the $80 billion Gamble and Dare to Dream, Dare to Act, which is available on all places, Amazon, Kindle, Audible, as well as bookstores worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a fun, exciting way of discussing how to not get screwed in your business, how to not screw other people as a business owner. He is a fantastic storyteller, telling us about the details that went into that $80 billion gamble. It was really a good conversation to just learn from someone that has, risen and grown businesses in show business and various other avenues, and listen to what his tactics, strategies, and methods are for building a successful enterprise. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this is Terry Rich.
Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews, the only show that's going to teach you how to be somebody.
Where in your life did you learn that you're not good enough?
Take what you're most passionate about and what you're most fearful of. And what is the plan to overcome that fear? And what is the plan to enact that passion?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. I'm your host, AJ Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33, or you can always go to my website, AaronJArmstrong.com. Today, we are with a very special guest, Mr. Terry Rich, the famous Terry Rich, who is the author of Dare to Dream, Dare to Act, as well as the $80 billion Gamble. Terry has a laundry list of credentials, like usual, and he is going to share with us some really inspirational stories around ethics, compliance, and business, but also some different, entrepreneurial success stories that he's had. And hopefully we can pull out some of the gold nuggets from those stories and share them with you guys all today. So Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's so nice to be here, and always fun to meet new friends and to talk about ways to success.
Yeah, it's always fun, as I've been doing this giant experiment, just running into different entrepreneurs and success stories like yours, just hearing the different stories, but the consistent similarities in what it means, to kind of find out what it means to be successful in different people's definitions.
Of course, success is big. I do so many speeches across the U.S. and across the world, actually, and I often get the 20 to 30-year-olds that say, I enjoyed your speech, but haven't you ever messed up? And it's also fun to talk a little bit about failure and what happens, because so many people try a brand new project and then something hit a kink somewhere, and then all of a sudden said, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. So we can talk a little bit about that a little later on too.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to get into that. It's funny. One of my friends has a podcast. It's called, or he just closed it up, but it's called What Not to Do. And it's about that same topic, because you see in social media and everywhere, it's just this highlight reel of different success stories. But I mean, all my mentors have told me it's like I could have just entire books of all the things that I've messed up. And it sounds like you've been there too.
Well, I started in college when my professor said, you know what, it's better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing. And I kind of took that to heart that, if you don't have your goal high enough, you're going to fail, and then you learn by that. And I learned it with my grandchild when she was just 1.5 years old. She was over and she was crawling, and all of a sudden pulled herself up on the Davenport and took that first step, and then went boom, and she failed. She fell over. Well, what did she do? She went back over, pulled herself up, and she did 2 steps, and boom, she failed again, and then 3 steps and 4 steps. And it's so easy when you have a project and it fails to say that's it. And I think one of my biggest successes came in my early 20s, to be able to do a promotion that landed us on the Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. And I actually failed a little bit in that. It started when I was first employed and I was doing on camera work, and I looked up and I didn't have a 5 o'clock shadow. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to write Schick and tell them that I love their Track 2 Razor, and I'll get a national TV commercial. So I sat down and typed a letter and sent it off, knowing that within 2 weeks I'd get a reply back with an airplane ticket, and I'd be out doing national TV commercials. Well, during those 2 weeks, I had this gut feeling, much that many people do when they're playing Powerball. What happens if, what if I did get this and I could do national television? And it really invigorated me and gave me a goal I really wanted to do. But 2 weeks to the day, I got the letter back, and it said, "Dear Mr. Rich, we appreciate that you wrote us about your Track 2 razor. Unfortunately, you wrote the wrong company. Gillette makes that razor. Here's their address." So I failed, but the motivation and the encouragement that I got from just thinking what it'd be like led me to go on to bigger and better things, and ultimately be on the Tonight Show, and learning about satellite uplinks and doing the first satellite uplinks across the world, and doing those, using that knowledge to do national television with HBO, ESPN, and all the networks.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually coming to you right now. This is an audio show today, but I've got just this monster beard, so really hits home. Learning about the race. There's the Billy Gibbons, the guitar player for ZZ Top. They said Gillette was willing to pay him $1 million to shave his beard on camera,
Wow.
and he said no. That's Billy Gibbons for you. But Terry, tell me, bring me back to the beginning. Where did it all start for you? Tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your childhood, and how that rolled into some of these different successes being featured in major networks, HBO, ABC, ESPN, Johnny Carson show. Like, tell me where it started and how your mindset and the way you started to view the world changed, and it allowed you to find those opportunities.
Oh, I grew up on a small farm in Iowa. We didn't have a lot of money, but my dad was always encouraging. I'd say, hey, he'd say, you need to do chores. You need to go down and feed the sheep. I'd say, let me call my Uncle Short, see if I could get a hose that goes down there, and so I can dump milk up here at the house and let it go down there for the drink. He had laughed, but he'd say, that's kind of a good idea. But he's always encouraging. In all of my successes, he would always, when I'd call him, say, hey, this happened to me today, he would always say, can you say that? Tell me that again. I thought he was hard of hearing, but he really was encouraging me. And I think throughout the years, that was a major factor in trying something new, trying risks, and taking the risk to try something new. I got through college. In fact, I got a BS in speech. I was a math major, but someone said you go over here and make money doing radio and TV. So I got a BS in speech and started in cable television in a very entrepreneurial company. Ultimately became a New York Stock Exchange company, and just absolutely everything we touched turned to gold. And it was so fun to take a risk and have it work almost every time we touched it. And I learned that is the jazz, making the money, becoming successful, and ultimately getting to 62 and being on Social Security. That isn't success. Success is happiness happens on the way to success, being happy every day. And that was really a fun company. But at age 40, I made all my goals. We cashed out, much like a Google and some of the others, but this was in the early days of cable television. And now I had the money I wanted, but I needed to find that same feeling of success and entrepreneurship. So I started 4 or 5 companies. During the time I was at Heritage was the time that, remember I mentioned that I had this small town and I did a promotion, and I sent out 44 letters, and 43 of them, I didn't get anything back in a promotion, but the one that I sent out made it to United Press International, which ultimately got us on Johnny Carson. And they talked about uplinking the entire show, Tonight Show from Cooper, Iowa. Never been done before. They guaranteed us front cover of Time, Newsweek. Well, that idea of uplinking had never been thought of in our state, in the Midwest. So I decided, well, that'd be a good idea of how to promote HBO. We would buy a satellite uplink, bring it in, and I would show free HBO, would show the movies free, and then in between say, hey, you like that movie? Well, call now, 1-800, get HBO, and you can get it in your home. And the very first time we tried that with a company, never been done before, we sold $15 million worth of HBO.
Oh
So
my
that really
gosh.
helped my success. And I took that when we cashed out our company, and I started doing it for Comcast and Time Warner and then ESPN and HBO to sell product. And that really, really worked well at own company. But I got to age 50 and I thought, you know what? I've been on the road. I've got the money I want. Family, I need to see my family more. So I decided to try something new. I think a midlife crisis is probably what it was. And I got a call from an ex-governor, said, hey, they're about to close the zoo. Would you be willing to go in and we'll take it over and make it a nonprofit rather than city run? They were losing $600,000. Let's take over the zoo. I thought, well, I've been on the farm. I should be able to handle giraffes. So we took the zoo over and turned it around and got $15 million extra in endowment. So it's around forever. And at the end of that, I got a call from the current governor and said, hey, the lottery director quit. Would you like to run the lottery? So I got in the lottery and then got mixed up with this whole largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. When I'm a marketer and promoter, as you probably can tell, that was a unique, different feel for me on ethics and integrity. And ultimately, once we got him in jail and prison and everything settled up, I got to retire. And now I travel the world doing speeches on ethics and on creativity and idea generation. So that in a nutshell is what I've been doing, where I'm at, and why I'm sitting here.
Wow, there's a lot of gold in that. It's funny. My producer, I think he's got a little bit of a sports gambling problem. So when he saw lottery, he got so excited. He's like,
Oh,
"We
yeah.
got to get this. We got to get this guy on." But tell me about that scandal a little bit. I know that's a big part of what you now teach is something that gets missed a lot when we talk with entrepreneurs. And I've actually had guests on this show that have later been found out to have ethical issues in their business or whatever that, we have to go back and share with people on social media. Hey, this person had some problems. They still might have said some good things, but their brands now make my brand look bad. And you see this like entire PR nightmare, night web happen. And that's not to mention just the dishonesty and integrity that happens in business. So tell me a little bit about that story and what you learned from it and how you help some of these different business leaders and entrepreneurs today with how they look at ethics and compliance, even at like the micro entrepreneur level.
So you go into a business, starting a business, and you're doing well and things are going good. And everybody thinks about sales and marketing and profits and all that sort of thing. But when you look over at the accountant who's saying, hey, that travel receipt doesn't have it isn't correct, or it doesn't have the proper receipts on it, or, hey, we need to do this audit, everybody kind of shuns that off. And I was in the same way, man. We were selling the lottery product was dropping off the shelf. It was all going good. And we had a lot of big jackpot winners to give away. I gave away over $1 billion in my 10 years. But the second year into this job, I get a call, hey, we got a winner on a product called Hot Lotto. 17 states kind of pooled their money, just like Powerball, same kind of game, only it was 17 states, not all 50, pooled the money together, and someone won the jackpot from our state. And that's okay, but no one came to claim it over the first week. Well, you get a year to claim the jackpot, no big deal. People try to get to their accountant. Then it was 6 months. We started barking, somebody, this is $16.5 million. You need to come in and claim it. Check under at the visor or wherever you keep your lottery tickets. And then we started getting prank calls. Hey, I think the clerk stole it from me from this other store. Or my husband's in the mafia and I haven't seen him for 6 months. I know he's a truck driver. I know he did it. So if somebody claims it, check out for mafia. Well, we did get a call at 11 months in, and the guy said, I've got the ticket. He gave us the right numbers, but he said, I'm just going to send it to you. You send me the 16 million bucks. Ding, ding, ding. Come on, buddy. How dumb do you think we are? Well, we didn't do that. He lied to us. We talked in a couple more conversations. He said what he was wearing. We had the videotape of what the guy looked like that bought the ticket. So we called the DCI Attorney General, and we were going to arrest him when he came in. But instead, he gave it to his friend, and his friend tried to claim it through a couple of lawyers in Des Moines. And lo and behold, he was going to claim it by a trust. We realized the trust president was the guy in Canada, the first caller. So we knew these two were colluding some way. And we said, we want to know who the buyer is, or we're not going to pay it. Well, they said, we don't have to tell you. We said, yes, you do. And by Iowa law, you can't be anonymous. Lo and behold, they said, you know what? We don't want the publicity. Our client doesn't want the publicity. We're going to just withdraw the claim. Well, ding, ding, ding. Now we really have an investigation. So then we tried to talk to them for almost 3 years. Ultimately, our Department of Criminal Investigation got to them and asked them a very simple question. Raise your hand. Do you want to be the defendant or you want to be the witness? And both of them said, we want to be the witness. We got this ticket from somebody in Houston, Texas. We found out the guy's name, but we couldn't coordinate how. He didn't look like the person on his Facebook and all the social media. He didn't look like the guy who was on the video we had buying the ticket. And ultimately, we figured it out through social media that he was associated with one of our vendors, the multi-state lottery head of security, who actually designed the programming for the computer that drew that lottery game. Well, ding, 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 something screwy here. So we did investigation, ultimately charged the employee. So it was an internal employee of a vendor of the Iowa lottery. It wasn't an Iowa lottery employee, it was a multi-state lottery employee. And the prosecutor was phenomenal, said, you must have done it because you programmed the computer. And so your friend won, you must be involved in this. And he was found guilty. So felt like it was the end of the story. It was the end of the story because it was just a little Iowa case. All of my counterparts in the other states saying, hey, just pay it. What, this is an Iowa deal. Don't bring this in. You're gambling with the $80 billion that people spend on lotteries across the US for good causes. We don't want this in our state. Just pay it. But when he was found guilty, he made a fatal mistake. He had his brother come up and testify, another Texan, justice of the peace. And his brother got on the stand and said, that can't be my brother because that person buying it on the videotape bought 2 hot dogs. My brother ain't a hot dog guy. Well, the guy that worked for the multi-state lottery was probably between 300 and 400 pounds. And everybody's head looked like this guy isn't a hot dog guy. And the Associated Press made it a story, put it on the national wires. It made it back to the brother who was going to give him the testimony to help him, his hometown, and an FBI agent said, wait a minute, this brother that testified, we were investigating for money laundering. So he gave us his name. Lo and behold, we started finding jackpots between the two of them of everybody. And this is the one, if anybody hears anything in this podcast, if you're ever going to do anything illegal, don't use Facebook, don't use LinkedIn, don't use your cell phone, because the police go directly to those first and get all of the names of your contacts. And then we cross-reference those with all of the winners across the United States. And we immediately found 5 jackpots. Well, lo and behold, the brother also was a Bigfoot hunter, and he was using his Bigfoot friends to claim prizes. So all of a sudden,
like an actual Bigfoot hunter, or like a metaphorical Bigfoot hunter?
An actual Bigfoot hunter.
Okay.
In fact, the reason that the FBI knew about him is that he was in a tree hunting Bigfoot, fell out of it, and was under a morphine drip when they interviewed him in the hospital. And he said, no, I didn't money launder. I won the money in Colorado at the Colorado lottery. And that's what set all this thing in motion of a national. So all of a sudden we had all the information, all the prosecutors, everybody had it together, and we busted Eddie Tipton. He got 25 years, up to 25 years for the frauds of all the different and restitution of the jackpots. His brother got 52 days, and his friend, the original one that came up through the lawyers in New York and Canada, he flipped first, so he had a proffer so that he got probation for a few years. What we learned in it, though, so that's the basics, is the largest lottery fraud. It was an internal deal. Here's what I learned. Fraud in America, fraud in the organization you may be involved in, happens with a 3-sided triangle, according to the American fraud examiners. Here's the deal. The first thing that to be able to commit fraud in your organization is financial need. Now, everybody needs more money, but usually somebody breaks and wants to create fraud in an institution, if they have credit card debt, big credit card debt, they go gambling too much, drinking too much, divorce, all sorts of those kind of things, you have the financial need. But you can't steal unless you have the second piece of three, and that's opportunity. Eddie Tipton wrote the code, he programmed the code, he installed the code, and he maintained the code. So he had all the keys to the kingdom in deciding how the numbers were drawn. And so financial needs one, opportunity. And think about in a small church, in a school district, the person that's a business manager or secretary, if they write the purchase orders and also write the checks, they have all the keys to the kingdom, and you'll see a lot of fraud in those small organizations because of it. But the third piece is the toughest to judge and the toughest to manage. So financial need, opportunity. The third piece is rationale. At what point do you as a human being say, and this is back to your guess or whatever, at some point to say, I deserve this or I need this, and you rationalize, I can do it because I have the opportunity and the financial need. I can pull this off. Either that they work me too hard, or they're, my company's making so much money, I deserve a little bit more. When you have all three of those together, you're right, financial fraud. And an easy example of demonstrating all three pieces is, let's say you take $100 bill and you put it in the middle of the mall, just drop it on the floor. How many people will walk by and they've got through all those? Gosh, there's $100. I could buy something with that. There's a financial need. Opportunity, heck yeah, the $100 bill is laying on the floor. But rationale, at what point to say, well, that really isn't mine, but I'm not going to turn it in. And I don't see anybody claiming it. Nobody's really going to miss it. I think I'll take it. So, what point do you pick up that $100 bill, or do you pick it up and turn it in and say but if you turn it in, won't that person keep it? That's the kind of rationale that you have to have in all three opportunities. And that's the real simple lesson that I learned in this of why Eddie did it. He had a financial need because his brothers were going through divorce and his best friend had been sued and they needed money. He had the opportunity, as I mentioned, and then he rationalized because they were working. It was a small group of people that were in this organization, and he was on call 24/7 for all those years, and he was just upset that they didn't respect him enough, and so he was going to show them.
Yeah. Do you think, like with a question I get a lot is when you're picking out your business partner in maybe an early startup phase, and you're kind of determining these checks and balances, it seems like it always, more cases than not, partnerships seem to fall apart because of some type of micro level fraudulent scheme. And one of the things I was taught a long time ago was to have three checks and balances. One was, like as you mentioned, somebody has the power to purchase. They actually have the purchasing authority. The other person has the authority to approve the purchase. So the one person cannot purchase without the other person's approval. And then if there's a third person involved, they would be in charge of the tracking of that purchase and the bookkeeping of it. And between the three of them, that could usually be a good system to prevent fraud in a lot of cases. Have you noticed, or what do you typically recommend for someone that might be entering into a new partnership or selecting partners in a small business? Because small business owners just get robbed all the time by different people. And how can they, prevent that as a business owner going forward?
The checks and balances are the big thing. My attorney, when I started my companies, told me, whenever you can, never have partners, which was pretty good advice because everybody has different priorities as you're going into it. Somebody may need cash flow today. They want to be paid today. Others may be looking at the long term. So picking partners, making sure your financial opportunities are the same. Most people don't realize, you mentioned the third piece there, the audit, how important that is. But most people, when I was in charge of the lottery, or people who bring in their auditor at the end of the year, that was what I thought. They came in, they checked, everything's fine, I don't have any fraud. But unbeknownst to most, the majority of fraud found in any organization is by employees, vendors, and anonymous tips. So I think having a tip hotline or someplace people can say, not to turn people in to get them fired, but say, hey, this just doesn't feel right. That's how we caught Eddie ultimately, through a national tip line when we played the video. But even in an organization, that's where most people find they're there. Then you've got the internal audit and management oversight, but the one at the very bottom, it's like 40% of the fraud is found by employees, vendors, anonymous tips. At the bottom, only 4% is found by an external auditor. So I think my advice is have as many checks and balances as you can. People hate the accountant because they're wanting to make sure you've got receipts or you're not turning in something that is unethical. But it's always tough when you're just trying to make it and you're busy. And I don't have time for all that paperwork, but it is important in the long run for sure.
Yeah, because the first problem kind of goes to my mind where someone might be scaling their business to some level, and what do? They it's time to delegate some responsibility, and they hire a general manager, not understanding that they're giving them almost all of that approval ability, the ability to purchase, the ability to have authority to decide purchases, and then they're also responsible for the bookkeeping and auditing process themselves. And just a mom and pop shop or a bartender who's sick of working on the nights and decides to hire a general manager to use their responsibility falls into that trap all the time.
Boy,
And
you
yeah,
hit
go
the
ahead.
number one industry I think of when I think of that is restaurants. There's so many people go into restaurants, and as soon as they get the general manager, they start skimming the cash because there's a lot of cash. Anytime you're in the cash business, especially, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it seems like, but that's good advice, and it's a good way of thinking about that. As someone who's been on the back end of that in a much bigger organization, but also having startup experience yourself, you can kind of preemptively prevent a lot of this by having hotlines, as you mentioned, or checks and balances, or different systems. Do you notice any other good checks and balances to prevent these types of things from happening, other than giving employees awareness and tip hotline or whistleblower hotlines or whatever you'd like to call it? Do you notice any other checks and balances that we're kind of missing that you think work well?
I think that as an entrepreneur, I was not big on having big policy books and all sorts of things. But one of the things the American Certified Fraud Examiners recommend or say that the ones that have less fraud have that tip hotline of some sort, just someplace people can say this doesn't feel right. And the second is that you have a policy, and when you hire someone, you say you do know that if we see anything that even smells of fraud, you're fired, and we will prosecute. So you put something as part of the company's policies that says that. As an entrepreneur, though, you want I think having a really good accountant with oversight and having that audit is also a big thing. It's tough when you're a small organization and you're trying to decide where to hire up. Sure seems like hiring more salespeople would be much smarter than having a really good accountant or lawyer or internal auditor. But at some point, it really is important.
Yeah. And I've been screwed at the levels, just micro levels, right? Like I have very small businesses, and they're even just people that employees that aren't afraid to kind of fudge a couple things in their direction, or and it's just it's very common, and it starts at the smallest level. And I think it's just something for people to look out for as a small business owner too. But
Absolutely. I think
tell
I think that all of the speeches that I give, I have a lot of people come up afterwards and share their experiences, and most of them will say when there's an internal fraud, that was the absolute last person I ever suspected. And when you have a check and balance, if that person that writes the checks or that person that does the POs, if they know they have oversight, then they've got the little devil or angel on their shoulder say, I better not do this because I'm going to get busted. And I know they said it's immediate firing if I'm suspected or if I'm found guilty of this. It's just, and you tell them we have these procedures in place because we're protecting your job. Somebody else does something, you might get blamed because you didn't catch it. So let's have the checks and balances. I want you to keep your job and be good at it. And then we all feel good when we go home and we can sleep at night knowing things aren't shady.
Right. Shifting gears a little bit, we kind of talked about this idea of fraud and the hesitation that can bring to someone starting a small business, or someone involved in a small business, ready to scale and grow. But tell me, like, on maybe more of an optimistic front, what is it to have some of these bigger goals for people that do want to start a business, for people that want to get out there, that might, in the back of their mind be thinking of some thought or idea as an entrepreneur, but haven't quite taken that initial leap. As someone like yourself who started so many of these different ventures that have risen to massive levels of success, what is your kind of initial advice to some of these people just starting to tinker around in the back of their mind?
I think there's a couple of good rules of thumb. I told you the thought of have as few partners as you can, because every person will have an opinion and oversight on what you're doing. Have advisors as a board is a better option there. Number two is never bet your life on it. And it's easy once you're successful to take 10% of the proceeds and keep those for your risky ventures. It's like diversification. You're conservative in some, but you always want to be looking for that next big thing and that sort of thing. But if you're just getting started, don't take your entire bank account and leverage your house and everything else with it. You have a dream, can be successful. It'll probably be successful when you put it all together, but you want to have an amount so that if it doesn't work, you got to know when to pull the plug and not to keep going back to the bank account to do it. So I think those are a couple. The third, which I heard the other day, and each year after you go through all this, you learn some fun things. But an entrepreneur who's had some great success is a guy named Mcmurray in the IT world, and they ask him for a lot of boards because obviously IT is a hot thing today. And he says, I never look at the balance sheet. I look at the cash flow, because if you don't have cash flow, you're not going to survive in a small company. So again, the point is looking to where you're going to have the income and the expenses, and trying to have in your monies, as you set aside, not all your monies, a 2 or 3 year cash flow. So if you've got a bump like COVID or the others that you have, you still have money left over to continue your dream, that you can't live day to day or worry about how you're making payroll this week and hope to survive. So I think those are 2 or 3 ideas, I think, in getting started. But there is no better feeling than starting a new company, being an entrepreneur and have it be successful. And then knowing, again, if you don't have partners, if it's just you as an owner or family, when the money comes in, it's pretty darn rewarding.
Oh yeah. And something I always try to ask people is you see and I've had different guests on with all sorts of different backgrounds and beliefs and what it means to be a really successful entrepreneur. And you kind of get this dichotomy between two positions. One is you've got to just like have this instinct, like follow your heart. Like it's okay to like, just quit your job, jump all in, go, and it'll work itself out. You have that kind of school of thought. And then the other side, it's kind of like, well, no, like business people have conservative strategies. There's a way where you can use your job to cash flow into a little kitty that you can use to snowball some type of entrepreneurial idea. And to your point, you wouldn't be sacrificing massive cash flow to get going in your personal finances. And that's a little bit more conservative a route. But then the downside to that is that your focus is divided between many different things versus your focus being just aimed solely on trying to get more sales or something like that. Where do you kind of stand, or what's your opinion to someone that might be in that position of, oh, do I just quit what I'm doing and go all in? Or is there a way to kind of like seamlessly scale out of it?
Well, yeah, let's go back to cash flow. You know what you're making right now in the company. If you can take X% of that and start your new company, work evenings and weekends on that, and start seeing that you can, at what point you have the cash flow where you can quit your job, that to me is the ideal way to get started. Or let's say maybe you get an inheritance or something else, so that gives you the start of the cash flow to get things going. But if you just say, I'm quitting and I'm starting my company tomorrow, and yeah, I've got a little bit of money in the bank and I know I can do a second mortgage, there are better ways to do it. And I think one of them is just keeping the job and taking 10% of what you're taking in each week instead of into savings. You start building it up to really start that new company. And when you do that, you'll need a good lawyer. You need a good, I'll give you an example. One company I started that was successful, I think will be a pretty national, they're going to do a big national feature here soon on it, is an idea. I tried to look for where success was and see what I could do to change it a little bit and start my own company. And World Wrestling Federation had #1 show on cable television. So I thought, what other sport has athletes like wrestling where people don't make any money after they get out of college? And I thought, well, in America right now, it's soccer. And so I hired a bunch of professional soccer players and started something called Soccer Slam. It's like WWE, only it's for soccer. Played it on an indoor ice rink. We put down AstroTurf. We hired some stunt people to do fights, and we had a whole storyline like a soap opera. And we did 4 shows for Fox Sports World and 1 for Galavision. And we got all these colleges all nuts about it. It was great. But the soccer purist hated it. But I took 10% of what I had in savings, or not in my company savings at the time, and put it, and it was just absolutely crazy. And it didn't really work out real well. And in that I couldn't sell it again because Fox Sports World says this isn't a soccer show. Soccer purists don't like it. So I was making more money on the HBO stuff. So I went back to that. And about half a year later, my kids went into a Best Buy and they saw a Sega game called Soccer Slam. I thought, what? And I looked at it and it looked like our uniforms and it looked like everything else. I tell this story because we had patented and trademarked all of the stuff around Soccer Slam. So our attorney called Sony, which was Sega's boss, and said, they laughed first, of course, a little dinky thing going on. But we sent them the video, and lo and behold, today they own the game rights. They still own the game rights, and we own the TV rights to this company called Soccer Slam. But that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had also the professional development of an accountant and a lawyer to get my corporation set up. Are you going to be an S corp? You're going to be an LLC, a C corp? Where are you at in the business model? Do you have your accounting set up so you're deducting the right thing so the IRS doesn't shut you down in a year? Those professional backups, like your employees, are really important when you're starting a new company.
Oh yeah, I agree with that 100%, because it takes a bit of a chunk out of your startup cash too, to get a lot of that foundational material out of the way, that legal work. Similar story. I had a friend of mine. I mean, he was very close, and he's trying to get me to invest into cattle. You probably know this with farming and stuff. I know nothing about cattle other than sounds like would be great. If the economy falls apart, having some cattle I can go rely on to get milk and meat. That's
Yep.
about it. So anyway, I thought it would be an interesting little speculative investment. And talking to him, he's just like, oh yeah, we'll figure out all the legal stuff later and all this and that. I'm just like, no, that's not how this works. Like, I know we're close friends and this is great, but you got to have this set up, because at some point this is either going to be, I plan on this being successful, otherwise I wouldn't be investing into it. And if it's going to be successful, that's going to change people and it's going to change their minds of how things work. Let's get, a legitimate operation agreement here where we can figure out who does what goes where, what happens when we want to sell, all this stuff, figure it out now. And I can see the temptation with a lot of people starting up to not do that, because it's expensive, it's a headache. You have to think about what happens when this thing actually does get to be huge. And most people go into it, if they're not already planning on this thing to be a success, then they're thinking this is a little micro issue. I think that's might be one of the bigger issues I've noticed, is people don't expect it to ever get big, and then when it gets big, it's too late.
Success breeds success. What you're pointing to is having, when you start a company, someone who will give you advice, who's been through it, to say, did you think about this? Did you think about that? That's huge. And most people who have been successful love to mentor other people who are good. And the easy other thing, if you don't want to have partners, is to do different stock for time. I had an accountant who I gave a portion of proceeds for the first 2 years for doing everything for free. Then I didn't have to put cash out. You can do things like that as you're doing it or mentioning that. But your point's taken. When I started my own company, I came out, I knew how to do satellite uplinks. I knew when I worked for this New York Stock Exchange company, when I did these free previews for HBO, that it cost about $125,000 for a weekend. So I decided to go out on my own, and I went back to the largest cable company, and I walked in to a guy who was already working with them and said, hey, here's the deal, let's do that. He said, well, I'll do the direct mail. So we went in, and he said hello to the big exec VP to sell this thing in. And he said, how are you doing? He said, hey, we've got this idea, would like to do an HBO free preview. I'll do the direct mail, he'll do it. He says, well, what does it cost for this satellite uplink weekend? And the guy who was going to do the direct mail said $200,000. I about fell off my seat. What do you mean? He's going to make 75 grand off me? Because I said 125. Well, we walked out the door when the guy says, okay, let's do it. All took of all of 5 minutes, my first sales pitch, to sell a $200,000 deal. But I looked at him thinking he's making 75. And I said, I thought I told you 125. He said, hey, they pay $1 million for the commercials. Don't worry about it. It's all yours. Well, if I had done it for $125,000, I'd have lost money, because when I worked for the New York Stock Exchange company, I wasn't thinking overhead, insurance, all of the things that you have to think about when you're in business. And I went back the next week to finalize it. And this guy said, "What are you doing in here?" And I said, "Well, I want to talk about the HBO free preview. We hadn't signed a contract yet." He said, "Well," he said, "we got a problem. Stars or Encore starting this new company. We were going to give it to everybody, all of our cable subscribers for $1. And all the attorney generals are suing us. We've got to go to positive option rather than just making them pay $1 and giving it to them free." He says, "Could you do that for Encore?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you're charging $200 for 3 days. What would you charge me for 30 days for Encore?" Holy crap. I gave him a number. He said, "Fine, do it." I signed an agreement. He gave me half the money the next day and half in 30 days. And we sold 1 million Encore customers, all because that guy upped it. And now I have all profit, and I had enough to cash flow me for 10 years.
Yeah. That's like, I mean, it kind of goes into the statement, you get what you pay for, right? In a lot of ways.
That's exactly right. I learned at the zoo, they were charging $4.95 to have somebody come in. I doubled the price right out of the chute of what it costs to enter, because you get what you pay for. Somebody said, "I'm paying $4.95. So if you go to Omaha, they're charging $28. But I gave away free tickets to anybody that was that was, didn't have the money, or if mom and the kids walked in and they looked up and said, 'Oh my God, this is too expensive.' I told the front desk, just let them in free." We doubled our admissions immediately by giving away a whole bunch free, but everybody who was coming from out of town would pay that money with no problem. And it seemed like it was worth more. You get
Yeah.
what you pay for.
You mentioned another interesting strategy that I don't think it gets talked about much, which is this idea of like kind of bartering your work, with one another. And I thought that was just something nobody ever really did. I never really thought of it a while ago until I started to kind of operate in a business environment a lot more with other entrepreneurs or self-employed individuals. It's actually quite common. I mean, for example, like when I want to file for a new business or a startup, my attorney happens to train with my wife, who she's kind of the premier personal trainer in the area, and we own a fitness business. And she trains with her and can offer us, credits towards getting legal work done, which just works great. And having a trade or a skill like that in your business practice that's valuable to other people can also be utilized in that same way. Do you see that go on too as you grow your businesses to a significant, much more advanced level than I'm at?
In the 90s, that was there were companies created just to work on barters. But the IRS started shutting it down a little bit. I think that on a small scale, you can do it and you're fine and dandy, but you definitely want to talk to your accountant when you can and can't, and what you have to show as income and what they have to show as income, especially if the two businesses don't relate to each other. But it's a really good way, and back to profit sharing, those sort of things are really good ways to find ways to save your cash flow, because cash is king. And having the cash to pay employees or to keep the lights on and that sort of thing, really, really important.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, when you're in a situation where whether it's you're about to start a new business, whether it's something's going wrong, and a specific example maybe in your life where everything was crashing. I remember we talked in the pre-show. You said there's so many different mistakes you've made, and it's just like about what was one of those big mistakes that you saw yourself falling into, and you were afraid, you were scared, and you wanted to figure out how to get out of that.
I think the Eddie Tipton story was so out of my wheelhouse that it scared the daylights out of me. And here's why. When you get into something that you're starting to do that involves legal and you worry that you may be sued, it's pretty scary, because lawsuits, I don't care whether if you file them or they file them, nobody wins, and it costs a lot of money. So when we started hearing that there was a problem, and I was saying, we're going to go to the ends of the earth, pay whatever it takes to find it, my counterparts in other lotteries were saying, I think I said this earlier, just leave it alone. We're going to get sued on this deal. You're going to make it a big deal. Well, my background is sales, marketing, and promotion. And so that's all I knew. So I would be on TV all the time saying, we were going to find this, we want to do it. Because I thought the integrity was big enough that people who played would think, geez, if they're going this hard after that, I don't want to try to scam them, because, and I'll play because it's ethic. Every time we got on TV, we sold more, even though we were talking about somebody maybe scamming the lottery. But what I realized once it got, and I was having fun with it, and it's kind of mysterious of what was happening. But then when they came in and they had the ticket, we went on TV for a press conference. I grabbed the ticket and I started my lessons because I held the ticket up in front of the cameras and I said, "We have the ticket." I didn't think about that ticket was probably going to be evidence in a major trial. All those people who are trying to scam us to say, "Hey, that was my ticket," 20 people who are trying to claim it with lawyers, they didn't have the right serial number, the right date or anything else. But by holding the ticket up and all the high def cameras, you hear all these zoom lenses going in. Now in the paper, every piece of security information that we asked for, they now had it, but it was only going to be on that one ticket. But now they had it so they could call back. And then as they started investigating people, and I was trying to tell my counterparts, we got problems because I'm hearing names that are within our industry and I can't say them because they're still being investigated. So I had a real ethical question. When you go to bed at night and think, I need to stop this because it's going to hurt our industry, of $80 billion industry, if we mess up. Yet I can't get involved in the actual investigation because then I would have to be on the stand testifying. That still to this day lends a lot of bad feelings because if I knew it, why didn't I tell somebody? So I lost a lot of friends within the industry who thought I was a villain because I pushed it too hard. Yet on the other side, some think I'm a hero because we stopped it. He'd still be doing it today if we hadn't done it. So that probably gave me as many sleepless nights as I ever thought of.
Do you think that happens to a lot of other people too in, different situations where it's in the military, we used to say, do the harder right versus the easier wrong. And in that circumstance, when you have that social pressure or you have people around you that are pressuring you into choosing or behaving a certain way versus what you know is right. Do you see that happen a lot in business and other places?
Absolutely. Well, you see that in politics, especially if somebody
Yeah.
gets by with something, if someone lies as a politician and someone else says, well, they got away with it. Why is it such a bad deal or that sort of thing? Yeah, I think you see it a lot in politics that's easy. In business, let's go back to the triangle. In business, if I have a new entrepreneurial company, my wife is yelling at me, why aren't we making as much as we did before? Your spouse is yelling back and forth, and you have the opportunity to do a deal that's kind of shady, doesn't feel right, but we need the money. It's pretty easy to cross the line. Or you hear all the time of investment people who take people's money and reinvest it somewhere else, thinking they'll make more money, and then take the 1 or 2% and then tell them they made it on the regular stock market or whatever. It's back to the rationale. I need the money or whatever, the financial need. And then they have the opportunity because they're controlling that. I've got a simple one that started when I was in high school. Talk about peer pressure. They were taking the senior class pictures of the concert band, and we all wore black outfits at the time, the uniforms, whatever they were. And I heard someone whispering down the line. All of a sudden, they got to me and they said, "Flip the bird." So we all had the bird flipped for that senior picture. They took 2 pictures. Well, 2 weeks later, they came back and took 2 more. I didn't know why they were taking 2 more, but they did. And I figured, well, everybody's going to be flipping the bird again. Well, the word had gotten out that they caught it, and I'm the only one flipping the bird in the final 2. So ultimately, I got called in, told I should resign as senior class president and all these other things, that punishment. But I went to talk to the band instructor, and he's the one that gave me the advice. My parents, of course, grounded me, but the band instructor said, "Hey, look, I've got kids. You made a mistake. You need to own up to it, take your punishment, and move on. That's the way that you succeed when you make a mistake." And I see that with Eddie. He's going to prison. So he's in prison for all these years. He hopefully will make something of his life when he comes out. And I think you just have to own up to it. And I think your conscience is much clearer when you do that. Everybody makes a mistake here and there.
Do you think there's a technique to, I guess, just when you're facing that, is it just willpower to resist that temptation? Or do you think that there's, something that makes it more doable to do that, if that makes sense? Because it's easy to say I'll do the right thing, but then once you're in that position, it's so difficult. What would you say is the thing that people should look to see how can I get out of this? How,
Checks and balances. We'll go back to the $100 bill on the floor in the mall. If you have cameras, if you see cameras all around as you see that $100 bill, although it's very tempting, that makes you think again. I think if you're in a business and you have the policy, you're going to be fired if you're caught, or you know that the auditor is coming in next week, or that there's spot audits or customers coming in who are paid to come in to offer something to you, and you don't have, all of those are the ways that helps people know there are boundaries and there are consequences if they have boundaries. If there are no boundaries and no consequences, that $100 bill is out in the middle of a field, no one's around, there's no cameras or anything else, it's pretty easy to pick it up. So I think the policies and oversight procedures are what's the best way, so that I'm not making the decision whether I should pick it up or not. The surroundings that I'm in were already set up that help me make that decision that I'm not going to do something wrong.
yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a great tool. And, I've seen that I've seen that done in a lot of different ways. I mean, one example that comes to mind is, I know one pastor of a major church, he actually has the church board has authority to audit and review anything that's on his desktop, right? So like if he's looking at dirty pictures or whatever, he can get audited and removed from his position as a church pastor. Another church pastor I know, and I think Mike Pence does the same thing that he's gotten critiqued for or whatever, where you can move or you avoid being left alone in a room with a woman to just resist any kind of that temptation that a lot of men fall into. And, whatever your opinion is on that, I understand people have different opinions, but I think it falls along the same lines of, how can you remove the temptation as far away from you as possible? And if you have these different processes where there's audits into things that you think you might fall into at some point, whether that's a money temptation or some type of lustful temptation or whatever that might be, it can be good to interject that into, your policies, your reviews, having an accountability group of friends or companies or employees or someone else that can come in and make sure that there's ethical compliance, which will just in turn be that extra hurdle that you'll have to go through to cross the line.
Absolutely. And on the Mike Pence example, that doesn't stop. I mean, it could stop Mike Pence. He put the procedure in, but the people that are with him know that they can't be alone with him, so they don't have an opportunity to do anything that would get him in trouble.
Right. And that's why I think, as you mentioned, having checks and balances on yourself. We talked about as a business owner early on about how you can try to remove employees from screwing you over, but you screwing over other people, you screwing over your partner, your customers, and doing unethical things. My wife is one of my biggest accountability buddies. I mean, even when I'm just talking, socializing a cocktail party, and I use a little hyperbole and exaggerate a story, she'll cut me off right there in the middle of dead center of a sentence. Say, how many? What was the number exactly? And just
That's
hold me
that's an
accountable.
absolute great example all of us can relate to, that our spouse helps correct and hopefully in a very positive way.
Yeah, and I give her crap for it too, because I say, hey, you can't let hyperbole, get in the way of a good story. My grandfather always said, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. But it goes back to what you're saying, having those checks and balances with yourself.
Exactly.
Well, wow. I mean, there's so much to talk to you about. I mean, we might need to do another round 2 of this episode and get some more details. I just have so much that I'd love to discuss with you just in show business and, as entrepreneurs in show business. But, unfortunately, we try to keep these to about an hour for our guests. And you've been just so exciting to talk to, sharing different stories. Terry, can you let our guests know where they can get more of this, where they can hear more of your stories, or, where they can stay in contact with you if you have, the ability to mentor or lead them in different avenues?
Well, my primary gig today is keynote speeches. So if you have an event or a big deal coming up, you can either contact Midwest Speakers Bureau, I think it's speakersnow.com, or the easiest way to contact me is terry@terryspeaks.com, or the website terryspeaks.com has a contact button on that. So that's probably the best. If you're interested in either of the books, The $80 Billion Gamble and the Lottery, or Dare to Dream, Dare to Act, which is the idea generation book that I did. Those are both on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. So thanks for letting me make a plug there. But if we get together again, I'll tell you what Ed McMahon was drinking in his coffee cup. And I'll answer any question anybody has about how do I win the lottery, what are the best odds, and how do you do it? How about that for a tease down the road, Aaron?
that could absolutely be something we could look into. And guys, if you have questions or comments, or you want us to reach out to Terry and get him back on, make sure you leave those in the comments of whatever platform you might be listening to this on. You can always go to our website, aaronjarmstrong.com/podcast, to listen to this episode and others. But guys, if there's something you heard today from Terry, resonated with you or someone that you might know, and you're thinking about how you could maybe help this person, share it with them, send it to them. That helps us get this podcast on multiple platforms. But Terry, one last piece of advice for entrepreneurs out there, what would it be?
Back to happiness happens on the way to success. If you're not happy today, you won't be happy tomorrow. So when you start that company, it's always when I make this goal, I'm going to be happy. Write down 3 or 4 things that make you happy every day, and you just keep doing it, because a positive attitude will bring much success in the entrepreneurial world.
You heard it from the best guys. It's about the journey, not the destination, as we like to say over on this side of the house. But Terry, Rich, thank you so much for coming on the show. You guys listen to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews podcasts. Be somebody.